Hi and welcome to the next lesson in the FASEM Introduction series. This lesson's topic is Basic Assembly Errors. First, I want to distinguish between two processes that we have already seen: the assembly process and the runtime process. Let's begin with an example. We have this first program called write failed. I begin with opening the console. Next, as usual, I'm going to assemble this program. FASEM 0 write failed .asm. This was the assembly process. This part was done by the assembler. I actually ran the program called FASEM. I gave this program the file write failed as input, and then FASEM processed this file and produced an output. The output is this file, writefailed.exe. Next, there is the part when I run this file. This is called the runtime part. So I want to emphasize, we distinguish between two different processes. The first one is when we assemble our program. The second one is when we run our program. The first part is called the assembly part, and the next one is called the runtime part. We are going to discuss today assembly errors which happen during the assembly process, which means during this part when we ran FASEM over our input file. These are called assembly errors. Errors that happen during our program's run are called runtime errors, and we are not going to deal with these kind of errors currently. Let's talk a bit about assembly errors and when do these errors happen. First of all, we already know that assembly errors happen only during the assembly process. They can only happen when we run FASEM over some input file. In this case, for example, we can see that no error has occurred. The assembly process finished successfully. So how could we have errors during the assembly process? Assembly errors occur whenever the assembler fails to understand what you wanted to do. Assembly errors are some kind of communication problem between you and your assembler. Maybe, for example, you misspelled something. Or maybe you used a non-existent instruction. Or maybe a non-existent register. As a rule, the assembler will never try to guess what you originally meant. He will just tell you about the error. You might be bothered, how come the assembler cannot guess what I wanted? Is he not smart? Well, the assembler is pretty smart, and maybe this is the reason he doesn't try to guess what you meant. Imagine, for example, what would happen if you wanted to do something, and then the assembler would guess that you wanted to do something else. A disaster could happen. Therefore, the assembler will never try to guess what you originally meant. The assembler will just tell you that you didn't write something correctly, and you have to correct the error. Luckily, assembly errors are usually easy to spot. The assembler will just tell you where is the error. He will tell you how to fix it. As opposed to assembly errors, errors which happen during runtime are usually harder to spot. They are a bit of a challenge sometimes. Beginners are sometimes intimidated by assembly errors. Maybe because they've never seen errors before, or maybe because they read some book about assembly and the book doesn't say anything about what to do when you have an assembly error. Therefore, in this course we are going to take a look at a few examples of assembly errors and see how to solve them. Let's begin with a few programs. The first program we are going to deal with is called writeFailed.asm. In this example, I want to show you this program called writeFailed.asm, which is pretty much a very usual program. Actually, everything is correct with this program. The assembly error which is going to be produced at this example is going to be related to the way we assemble this program and not to the program itself. As you can see, this program just reads a number from the console, then it multiplies the number by 2, and finally it prints it back to the console. A pretty simple program. Okay, let's begin by assembling this program. We open the console, and then we assemble fasten writeFailed.asm. It seems like the assembly process went okay. Everything succeeded. Now I want to show you an example of something which is pretty common. Let's say, for example, that I began running this program and then I continued to work. Maybe I forgot this program open somehow. Note that this program currently waits for input and I didn't give it any input, so the program currently runs. If I open the task manager, I clicked Ctrl Shift and then the escape button. If I look here, I can see that I have this program running. Inside the processes list, I can also see the program currently running. Let's assume that I forgot this program running, and then I opened another console and tried to assemble this program again. As you can see, I get this assembly error, writeFailed. If I really forgot about the other instance of the program, I might be wondering, how come I have an error? Everything in my program is good. What is the problem? Well, you always have to read what the assembler says. The assembler will tell you how to fix the problem. Let's take a look. It says error, writeFailed. It means that nothing is wrong with our program. It is just that the assembler wanted to write an output file, but he couldn't write the output file because something was interrupting him. At this case, he couldn't write the output file because there is already an output file called 0writeFailed.exe. And this file cannot be overwritten because it is currently open. It is open here in the first console that we opened. As you can see, this program is still open. It waits for input. If we give this program the input that it wants, it will end. And then, in the other console, if we wanted, we could just assemble this program, and this time, it is going to work. This is a pretty common assembly error, and I wanted to make sure that you see it at least once. Let's see another form of this error. Maybe, for example, I have Hex Workshop, which is an hex editor. And I wanted to see the contents of the result, write failed. Then I minimize Hex Workshop and I continue with my work. Maybe, for example, I want to add another instruction. Maybe I want to increase EAX by 1, right after multiplying it by 2. Then I save the program, and I want to assemble the program. Let's try to assemble it. As you can see, I get this error, write failed. That is because the file writefailed.exe is currently open inside Hex Workshop. Therefore, it cannot be overwritten with a new file. It cannot be overwritten. This is about the write failed error. Make sure that if you see this error, to check if the file, the executable file, is currently open, and find a way to close it.